listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plimer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
This episode of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast is proudly brought to you by Rucky Analytics. During this time of reflection, rugby coaches are looking for new ways to help their players improve. Rucky's non-biased approach to game analytics gives coaches and players the ability to identify strengths and weaknesses in their game, highlighting specifically what skills need improving to become successful. Rucky has redesigned the entire performance analysis landscape in order to answer that key question: is my team getting any better? Rucky has the answers. Find out more on rucky.com, ruckie.com, or find them on Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube. Welcome to episode 81 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plimer, and joining me today is Geraint Davies. Geraint is a head of PE and games teacher based in the UK and recently completed his Level 4 coaching certificate. He is an RFU Senior Coach Developer, a club head coach, and has coached from U6s up to senior international in both the men's and women's game. He's producing some excellent coaching resources on Twitter and YouTube under the title of Geraint Davies Rugby Coaching and Analysis, and it's a pleasure to have him on the show, so welcome, Geraint.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Before we get into the meat of the interview, what's your lockdown situation like in terms of rugby and like what you're doing personally, and also connecting with the teams that you're with at the moment?
Yes, strange old time, but still managing to speak to players every day. Kind of hour-long phone calls with various players each day, and then social media is pretty busy with the players messaging back and forth, which has been quite good. And I suppose it's just an opportunity. I suppose I'm trying to see it as while we're away from the field and we missed the last few games of the season, which is a shame. Opened up other doors and loads of cool conversations with different coaches from around the world, and I've been really pleased to be able to attend webinars, and kind of the Zoom calls have been a bit of a revelation. I've probably learned more from those Zoom calls in the last couple of weeks than I've learned all season, to be honest. So it's not a great situation worldwide, but there's opportunities being created from it as well.
Yeah, for sure, and and hopefully, that continues with regards to the sharing and the various unions producing content to make their coaches better, and that it's not just a global pandemic that gets it going, and that we actually continue with that, because it's definitely helping in personal and professional growth.
Oh, definitely. I think it's opened up some avenues of thought. I think maybe there was some perceived barriers before in terms of connecting with other coaches, and even the webinars that we've had the last few days with Stuart Lancaster doing last night. But that's a pretty cool thing to do. You don't need to get 300 people in the room. You can get them on their laptops. And if I'm honest, I think we probably achieved similar outcomes. While it's great having face to supplement it. It's a new avenue, and I think there's potential for accessing more coaches as a result of it. And as I said in the intro, you're a coach developer as well, an RFU coach developer. So you're speaking from that point of view as well. Yeah, very much so. It's the face-to-face courses that we do, I think, are excellent. I've enjoyed delivering them for a long time now. But I've always thought that there's something missing in terms of the depth that we go into, and you're always reliant on CPDs. CPDs are, if you can make it, they attend. It's much easier when the kids are in the bath to be able to jump on a webinar. Definitely, it's if you're a parent at home and you're the only one looking after your kids, as an example, then being able to access it on your laptop, that's such an incredible resource. Big opportunities going forwards, I think.
For sure. All right, then. Well, let's get on with your rugby backstory. When did you start playing, and what was a bit of a brief history of your playing career? Are you still kicking around now, or you hung the boots up?
Still playing.
All right, there we go.
it gets more and more rare every season. I started playing when I was 8 in South Wales, from a little town called Ammanford in South Wales, in Carmarthenshire. It's a part and parcel of being from that area, really, that you play rugby. It's not a choice. It's just a part of your kind of your genetic makeup. I loved it as a kid. Played kind of every single age group and school and club, and went through kind of the county system. And then at 16, made the decision to leave school and go, which was linked to the Scarlets. And then through that process, then played for the Scarlets a few times, which was pretty cool as a kind of 16, 17, 18-year-old. And then kind of a lot of the route that players go down, you hope and pray for a contract, and it didn't come when I was 18. So made the decision that university was going to be my route. Which was probably one of the bigger changes for me, really, and went to Loughborough University. So left Wales, which was a pretty big decision at that point, and played a lot at university, and that's kind of where coaching picked up as well. And unfortunately suffered a number of injuries through my youth. So a lot of back problems, torn medial ligaments and AC joints, and so. Through that's essentially why I always fell back on coaching, and coaching since the age of kind of 17 really has been my constant. So I've played and still play now. Kind of went through university and played as much as I could. Went then into a senior club, and then made a big decision going to teaching. And that was quite a big decision, really. It was a move away from my previous life as a rugby development officer and a rugby coach full time. To then go into a very different way of life, and the playing took probably a little bit of a backseat at that point. And then another big change, went to a different place to teach and coach, and then played rugby there. They were at Hartbury College, which is of course now playing the championship. So when I played for them for a couple of years, which was really good, kind of mixing it with my coaching and teaching. And then went to another club called Cinderford, which played in National 1, and also coached there. And at that point, my body started to struggle a bit, and I've actually had 2 major hip operations in the last 18 months. Got to the point where kind of my just wasn't keeping up. But fortunately, I'd made a decision quite early on that I was always coaching as my backup. Yeah.
You said you went to Loughborough, is that right?
Yeah, I went to Loughborough University. Did a sports science degree at Loughborough, which I absolutely loved.
It's a bit of a mecca in terms of coaching and phys ed, and there's been some big names come out of there in the education and coaching world.
Yeah, massively. It's great place to be. It was a massive change for me going from South Wales and kind of being in a place like that. But yeah, absolutely loved it. Kind of enjoyed my coaching locally, so coached in primary schools in the area around Loughborough, as well as playing for the university. And literally as soon as I graduated, I got a job for the university. So I worked as a rugby development officer for 3 years for the university, which was pretty cool.
So why did you end up coaching in the very start? What was the initial draw there that got you in?
Initially, it was when I was at college. As part of my course, I did a sports science course, right. A BTEC course from 16 to 18, and coaching was a part of the course. So kind of in primary schools around Llanelli, just sent out into the schools, very little prior knowledge, in fact no prior knowledge, and just off you go and see how you get on. That was a real baptism of fire, and I learned very quickly that coaching is a tough old task.
That's implicit learning in the real world.
Oh, massively. But it was a great opportunity, and it really ignited my passion for coaching. So I was 16 at the time, did my preliminary award, then did my level 1 award before leaving college. And then because I loved it, when I went to university, I then sought out opportunities, and I was fortunate to find a couple of local coaching opportunities in schools. Did my level 2 then through that process. And then just always had it there. And I'm the kind of person that I've never seen coaching as a substitute for playing. I see them as very, very different things. So yes, it's been a constant since the age of 16.
Wow, cool. And what when you reflect on that 15, 20 year journey, what have been some of the really big changes that you've made during that time, and were there any like key moments in your coaching time that caused those changes to push you in one direction or another?
Yeah, huge changes. I think when I think about that time, that early years, I was just guessing my way through in reality. And I think one of the biggest turning points for me is when I did my coach educator course, and that was in 2007. So I'd been coaching for kind of 5 or 6 years at that point, but in reality, I knew very little about coaching, and doing that course just completely opened my eyes up as to the coaching is a lot more than just chucking your corns out and getting kids to do practices. So it really opened my eyes up to how important connection is between the coach and the players. That it's a lot more than what happens just on the field. So that was a real big turning point for me. And then at the same time, I actually embarked on my level 3, which I did when I was 21. I started when I was 21. And I also took my first head coach job at that point with Loughborough Women's Rugby Club initially.
Right.
So that period for me was really transformational. It was really changed my mind as to what the game entailed. And while I was really analytical as a player and always really wanted to understand the game, I then saw it from a really different angle. I thought, well, actually, as a coach, I can develop a huge amount of knowledge that as a player I probably wouldn't have done. So it definitely brought. And there's been, I suppose, a significant number of changes since then. I think the next really big changing point for me was I went to Gloucester Rugby. I went there in 2011. And worked as their under 18s elite player development group coach. I did that for 4 years, and that period was just an incredible learning journey. I think I learned more in those 4 years than I'd learned in all the time leading up to that point. Just working with kind of quality players, boys that challenged me hugely in terms of where they wanted to be. Guys with aspirations to become British Lions, and some have managed it since. I'm working with those kind of guys. It meant that I had to up my game, and it meant that I saw the need to not just do a job, but be as good as you possibly can, and never accept that you've kind of reached the limit of your knowledge. My mindset since is that there is no limit. You just learn more and more, and the more you drive, the more you learn.
And what were your key kind of sources of information in those times? Where did you get those kind of key bits of theory that you could match to what you're doing on field?
I think the level 3 courses, it was pretty cool initially. I think that probably pushed me more along the lines of reading into skill acquisition, and challenging myself a little bit. I had my sports science degree, which covered some decent detail. But in terms of the specific coaching stuff, it was the level 3 really pushed me down that line of reading more widely. And then again, across the couple of the guys there were doing their level 4s at the time. And I was really eager to understand what their assignments were like and what theory they were covering. So that was a pretty good access to knowledge and information, and just spending time with other coaches as well. And I think that's something that probably stands out in the last 15 years or so as being really powerful. Just seeing other coaches coach, either to get kind of reassurance that what you're doing is okay, or to make you question what you're doing and see whether you can do it differently.
Yeah, and I agree. I totally agree, and hopefully that's an outcome of what we're going through right now. Is that, like you mentioned at the beginning, some of those perceived brick walls have now come down, and people are talking to each other more so than ever.
Yeah, definitely. I think there were some of the conversations I've been fortunate to have over the last few months, and indeed the last couple of weeks. Incredible conversations there. You realise how much you can glean from somebody else. Yeah. Just sometimes a 20-minute chat, but you can pick up some really important information just from what is a fairly straightforward conversation.
Yeah, and how much people are willing to actually talk when you actually tap them on the shoulder and say, "Hey, do you want to chat?"
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's been a massive learning point for me is being willing to ask. I mean, I probably throughout my life really I've been very determined to kind of gather information myself, to read widely, to pick up information myself. Whereas asking for help is a skill, and it's one that I've probably not been good enough at in reality. And this time has forced me to be. I've sent some pretty bold emails and direct messages on Twitter over the last few months. And it's come up with a lot of yeses, which I never thought would be possible.
No.
Some great conversations because of it.
That's the story of this podcast, basically. I throw it out there to anyone and everyone, and no matter what level they're coaching at. And, the amount of yeses you get back is astonishing, really.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you also spent 5 weeks in Jamaica, and on top of everything else, you've been awarded a Masters in Education Leadership. They're two pretty cool journeys. What were some of the big lessons in those experiences for you?
Yeah, well, I think the trip to Jamaica was pretty transformational, really. Just after graduating, I was really lucky to go on a coaching exchange, which was a part of RFU University and the Jamaican Rugby Union working together. Just an incredible change of culture, very, very different people, incredibly welcoming, but from a kind of a third world perspective, really, really different setup in terms of their rugby and their way of life. So being really engrossed in their culture, it was a massive cultural shock. Coming from South Wales, and in reality, kind of Loughborough University was as different as it got from me, really, at that point in life. So going to Jamaica, it really opened my eyes up to just one, how different the world is, and how people see things alternatively dependent on where they are in the world, and just how much you can do with. They were playing rugby on pitches that were virtually all dust, so very, very little, if any, grass on them. Absolutely rock solid. A lot of the kids didn't have boots to play with, so they were playing barefoot. A lot of the kids were going to school, in a couple of schools they go to school without school shoes on. So being barefoot was pretty normal for them. And then they got to the rugby field and they just give absolutely everything. I was probably most shocked in the rugby context by just how committed they were to what they were doing. Absolutely 100% effort. Never complained one bit. And you think about what they all that they don't have in comparison to what we just take for granted. I was amazed by it. And then allied to that was just how welcoming they were and how grateful they were. I was at the time I was only 21 at the time, so I was pretty young and green. And they were really, really welcoming of the support, and they've been lifetime friends, and I've kept in touch with them since. So yeah, how those values of the game can really shine through, and how welcoming people can be and respectful, regardless of the other things that they have to endure within their lives. So yeah, pretty cool experience.
Cool.
Yeah. So then my masters, I started that way back in 2013. I did it part time. I was at that point in life where I just finished my teaching qualification, and I felt that I was in the swing of academic study. And if I didn't do it then, in all honesty, I don't think I'd ever fitted it in. So while I knew it was going to be a massive task with small children and a full-time job, I just thought that now's the time. Fully engaged in it, and it was incredible. I was very fortunate with my professor that he had a real in-depth knowledge of all things education, leadership and management. He'd run his own business. He'd been very successful in out of education, and then decided that he wanted to come and share all that, as well as being a researcher. And he really opened my eyes up to the deeper things of an organisation. So rather than just thinking that you can go to an organisation, you can start your job and it'll all be fine, he really put the nuts and bolts in behind about stakeholders and how you manage your environment. Understanding that people have different interests within their job, and even though you think you're in the same job as somebody, and for the same reasons, the likelihood is that you aren't. And people have different agendas with what they're doing. Also, some of the management of change, I think that really stands out. The managing change is, if you want it to go the way that you would like it to go, you've got to be pretty careful. You conduct yourself. Change is one of the sayings that sticks in my mind is that change is inevitable. But do we have control as to whether that change goes in the direction that we would really like it to go? And there will be lots of deviations along the way. But if you've got an end goal in sight and you're relatively thoughtful as to the way you'd like to get there, then you've got a better chance of reaching your outcome. And it really changed my perspective of society in general. Really, kind of the framework the society is built on, and the forces and the powers that people will execute dependent on what they want to get out of life. And I definitely apply that to a rugby coaching environment, and the different influences different players will have, and the committee behind the scenes, the rest of your coaching team. So it's helped in all walks of life. I'd probably say out of all things I've done, in reality is probably the most life-changing thing that I've done. And considering some of my trips to Jamaica and Barbados and some places that are very, very different. I probably still hold that it's the most transformational thing that I've ever done.
Awesome. All right. Well, you've become pretty prolific in terms of producing video content for coaches, both on YouTube and Twitter under the Geraint Davies Rugby Coaching and Analysis tag. How's it feel to be borderline internet famous?
I'm certainly not as famous right now, but it's really, really cool. I mean, that would be my summary. It's a really cool thing to be able to engage with and talk to people from all over the world on a daily basis without fail. I'm passionate about the game. I don't hold back when it comes to my acknowledgement of the fact that I love the game and I love it wholeheartedly.
Exactly.
And I love everything about it. So when people talk about the various aspects of the game that interest you, well, there's no part of the game that doesn't interest me. Mm-hmm. So being able to talk to people from different walks of life and different perspectives, I mean, that's pretty cool. That's probably the thing I enjoy the most of it.
Yeah, well, what inspired you initially to go down this path too? Because it's a pretty bold move, like put the podcast the same. Is like you're putting yourself out there, you're putting your views and your thoughts about a particular scenario. In your case, on video and an analysis of it, and applying that to training. What was the initial impetus there to get that going?
I was pretty terrified when I put my first video up. In fact, I felt actually quite strange emotions. You feel like I felt pretty embarrassed, to be honest. I thought, God, what am I doing to myself?
Right.
The stimulus was my coaching life has changed quite significantly since leaving Gloucester in 2015. So I no longer work in any performance environment. I work very much in the community game. And that's really enjoyable, but it doesn't necessarily give me the depth of thought that I would like to be exercising. So kind of making videos is something I've really enjoyed doing for my own teams for a number of years. And then the real final stimulus, I suppose, was a comment that was made by Eddie Jones in the press, where he commented just after the semi-final where England beat New Zealand. He talked about the fact that he wanted the game to be 80% unstructured and 20% structured, and he felt that England were on their way to be in that kind of style. And I just disagreed wholeheartedly. I just thought that's not the way that you play. That's not the game you play. It's not the way that any of your teams have ever played. So I thought, well, I'll make a video of the first try, just to demonstrate that actually they are playing with shape, they are playing with structure. And although there's loads of variation within that, the game still has shape to it. It's not just random things happening on the field. There's a lot of pre-planning and interaction with the environment happening. So I made the video, then kind of came to the point where I had to put it on, and so chucked it on Twitter. So I thought to see how it would go, and it just went off. Just got a ridiculous number of views, kind of got about 35,000 views in the first couple of days.
Awesome.
It became really, really popular. But well, that's brought lots of discussion. Lots of people commented, and had some really good in-depth discussions with some people. Had people then direct messaging and wanting to know more. And I thought, well, this maybe I'll do another one. So I didn't set out with any plan in mind in any way whatsoever. It was just a case of, well, I disagree with what is being said in social media, and maybe if I put something out, maybe we'll get some discussion. And that's pretty much my approach since, to be honest. I still take the mindset that I want to show people what I'm seeing, gain some discussion from it, and yes, it's gone pretty well since.
Cool. Well, I'll be sure to put your Twitter handle in the show notes, as well as the YouTube link as well to your page, so coaches can check it out if they haven't already. What in the time you've been running it, what have been some of the big messages or big learnings that you've taken away from it that you can apply directly to your coaching? I know for me this pod has been hands down the best coach development experience I've ever had. What about you? No doubt you're learning a ton from this project.
Yeah, massively. And it showed me how much of a message you can get across in a short space of time. I think that's and in reality, I hadn't perceived that when I put my first few videos up. Now I use iMovie as a really basic program. We've got 240 seconds, which is or 220 seconds rather, which is a ridiculously short length of time to get a message across, and yet you can get huge amounts of detail in that short space of time. And I think I took that then into my own club and my own analysis sessions. I thought, we don't need 25 minutes. We don't need 20 minutes. I can send these boys 5 minutes of clips, absolute maximum, and that'll generate enough discussion to not need a big sit down. And actually, eventually, we got into the point with my club that we don't sit down anymore. We don't do sit down analysis sessions anymore. And we get, I think, we get probably more done by just changing the approach, and that's definitely come from the Twitter process. I think other things that come from it is just how different people's perceptions of exactly the same picture can be. And I think while you're almost subconsciously aware of that with your players, I probably hadn't really in detail perceived just how different some of these perspectives could be, and just how valid their perspective is. That it's only my opinion, and as though it's kind of absolute fact, this is what's happened. That's I think that's problematic, and I try on my social media to make that point as regularly as I can. It's just what I'm seeing. So it doesn't mean to say this absolutely what's happening. It's just the way I see it, and I take it into my coaching environment as well. Just accept that not everybody sees things the same ways, but trying to help people understand each other. I think that's a pretty good outcome.
Yeah, I think it's a result of the complexity of rugby, really, that there are so many working parts, and depending on what your background is, even your positional affiliation, 10 people could see it 10 different ways.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're all probably right in some way or other. And it's and I suppose it's another thing that comes out of it is just how important it is to get some kind of coherence through that. Kind of on social media, I can get to a point where we just agree to disagree, and that's fine. In a coaching environment where these guys are going to be making decisions that support each other, I'm not sure you can agree to disagree. You have got to find some kind of coherence. So if one person thinks you should be kicking, one person thinks you should be running, you've got to find a middle ground there somewhere, and you've got to find coherence. And so, I think how important it is, I suppose, to gather their opinions and get guys talking and get them sharing their opinions, particularly the ones that are really, really quiet. Because often players are really quiet when they don't want their own perception challenged. Sometimes they feel that they're quite happy with the way they think. They don't want it challenged, so they remain quiet. So just drawing that out a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think I had Dave Vessels on the show from. He was with the Force at that time. He's now with the Rebels, and he talked about how he and his staff, when they're meeting, there might be disagreements, there might be passionate debate, but once they walk out of that room, they're all aligned, they're all on board with the message that was decided at the end. Mm-hmm. And I think that's pretty important.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Cool. All right. Well, in some of your recent videos, you're obviously trying to create context of some kind that can then be transferred by coaches into their practice design using video, a short clip of video. Can you explain an example of how you'd build such a context-based practice session as a coach using various constraints within your session based around some initial video footage?
Yeah, I think one of the main things I look for in the videos is what information is relevant within a particular picture. So something I really enjoy doing is taking snapshots of a particular part of the game and then considering what are the contributors to that situation happening. So use a ruck as an example. If you look at 50 different rucks, you will get lots of difference, of course, because they are just the nature of the game, but you'll also get some consistency, and there will be certain variables that remain regardless of how we got to that point. There will be some variables that are very, very similar. So that's one thing that I like to do, is kind of take lots of different of a scenario, consider what the defensive behaviours are like, consider what start points are like. So kind of as a tackler or as a defensive line, if the person on the left hand side has made a tackle, who's most likely now to enter that ruck, and what would be the challenges they face? Where are legs? What do they have to go around? How does the tackle impact their entry to a ruck? So my practices then are directly related to that, and we'll start tackles in a variety of situations. I'll ask the ball carrier to fall backwards in the tackle, so the picture's different. Kind of don't tell support plays that's the case. Start their practices in a defensive shape, which is probably it sounds actually quite obvious, but it's so incredibly important. I mean, most rucks you enter are from initially some form of defensive pattern. It's actually quite rare that you'll enter a ruck from a completely variable situation where there's players everywhere. Transition, one phase maybe. And as of then, you're into defensive shape. So start in your ruck practice with your defensive team in shape, even if it's only 3 players, that they're probably side by side and they're probably fairly evenly spaced as they would be on the field. So yeah, that type of thing is I get a lot of pleasure out of trying to represent those kind of practices as closely as I can to the game.
Yeah, well, there was the one recent that you put up about defence and how within attack meeting defence, there's often a number of 1v1s that appear, and then I really like that video, and I'll put that up on my website so people can find it and see it. I got a lot out of just the way you I'm a big fan of the whole part whole structure, and that the parts is the drilly bit, and the whole I'd probably say would be 80% games for me. But just the drills part of it is how you manipulated the cones and the position from where the ball carrier is running and the tackler's coming from to try and replicate a 1v1 in a game. I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's based, I suppose, on my underlying philosophy, which the context is everything. It doesn't have to be in a game as such, but it has to be game related. So that 1v1 practice, we'd done some video with the boys. I'd shown them kind of what type of situations we were experiencing on a Saturday, and then I went through with them the practice at the start of the session and just kind of explained that if you can picture back from the video, this is the touchline, this is where the other defender would be, this is the space that you have to work within. So kind of one of the things with one-on-one practices is that by the definition of the game, you're never on your own. There's 14 other players on the field as long as you have another card. But you will still have to cover a certain space where it is your responsibility. So just put it into that kind of context, and the size of the area is really important. Having a kind of 40-meter wide space for a one-on-one it's maybe relevant every now and then, maybe for a line break and a 15 is going to make a tackle, and you might want to replicate that. But that's a pretty rare situation, but you'd want to explain it. So keeping it in context, regardless of whether it's 1v1, 2v2, 3v3. What's the context? What part of the game are we trying to replicate?
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, I'll definitely, like I said, I'll put that up on the website. And in the introduction, I mentioned you've recently been awarded your Level 4 certificate. Can you explain a little bit about the application process? I think it's pretty selective. And what was your main reason for pursuing the Level 4 in the first place?
Yeah, it's pretty long process. It's quite tough to get on. Actually, I applied in 2014 initially when I was at Gloucester, and I was at that point I was pretty desperate to get on. I think the main reason for me applying was that I just wanted to expand my knowledge. I wanted to push myself as far as I could possibly go. And I was really excited by the content of Level 4 because at that point in time, the Level 4 changed from its old version to being actually quite an academic course. And I'm pretty excited by that. That's I'm pretty academia led really with my approach to most things. So it would give me access to resources and to academic study that I wouldn't get otherwise, and also that it would help me connect with guys in the same kind of situation, guys who who want to aim for the stars and want to do as well as they can do in their coaching lives. At that point, unfortunately, I didn't get on. Pretty tough process. Ended up went through the interview process of Twickenham, and unfortunately, I missed the boat on that one. So then decided to go for it again, which was a pretty big decision, really, after suffering an initial disappointment. And I thought, well, you've got to try again. It's an opportunity to do the course and to go through it. So filled out my application. Went through the discussion process and the rationale process again to explain why I wanted to do the course and what I felt I could bring to it. And I was very pleased to gain a spot.
That's awesome. And what's it look like now, the new Level 4 in terms of coursework?
Yes, it's pretty heavy, to be honest. You do six workshops, so an introduction workshop, and then 5 following. Part of that is you're out in the field. So we went down to Simon Amos's England 7 session. Right. And we had a day there, which was really cool. And a couple of days then for each of the module with various coaches from around the Premiership or international coaches, where they came and presented or delivered sessions, and we got some work with them. So the kind of the face-to-face aspect of it was really enriching and enlightening, and definitely challenged and changed a lot of my perspectives. And then each one of those modules follows up with an assignment. So we did 5 assignments during the 18 months, and that then finishes up with a long-term assignment, which took 3 or 4 months of solid graft to put together. So it's a pretty intense and tough process, which is tough to balance with general life, but worth it without shadow of a doubt for the kind of the learning that's come from it.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I was just about to ask that. What was your final assignment on, and what were some of the big takeaways for you?
I did the final assignment basically on the things that interest me the most. So coach education and being context based in your coaching, and as being as kind of theory informed with your coaching. So I interviewed half a dozen coaches from either elite rugby or elite netball. I wanted to go big, so I interviewed full-time professionals, so guys working in the Pro 14, the Gallagher Prem, and an international coach. And I wanted to do 2 things. So one was to gather their experience as a coach, and kind of where that journey had gone from, and indeed what the kind of turning points were along the way. So what influenced them to go into it in the first instance, what happened along the way, and how did they get to where they are now. And then the flip side of it was then on field, what do you deliver? What does your practice design look like? What's your philosophy? And then looking at those 2 things together. So when it comes to practice design, how was their journey influenced the way that they think and the way that they work. And it was incredibly enlightening. Unfortunately, my final write-up included probably a small percentage of the really rich information that we covered, but kind of restricted by a word count. I'd probably cut out more than I would like, but it's opened up some avenues for future. So yeah, really cool and massively insightful.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely seems you took a massive amount away from it. Great. All right. Well, we always end the show with the same final 4 questions. When you were a kid growing up in Wales, who was one of the players that really got you interested in the game, got you passionate about it?
Oh, I was a massive fan of Neil Jenkins as a kid growing up. I was in an area where right on the border of Swansea and Llanelli. So in terms of the regions. And I actually made the decision that Pontypridd were going to be my team because of Neil Jenkins. So he was a big Pontypridd player and scored a lot of points for them. So yeah, he was. I idolised him as a kid, and read his autobiography and kind of heard the way that he practiced and the time he spent on the pitch, and that definitely transferred to me and spending a lot of my time on the training pitch on my own.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, he's a massive name, and no matter where you are in the world, the name Neil Jenkins definitely rings out for sure. Cool. What about now? Who are some of the players you like watching?
I'm a massive fan of Rhys Webb. I think as scrum half score, he's a massively talented player. I really enjoy watching him. It was interesting the years he spent in Toulon and how that's then impacted his international aspirations. But pretty cool to see him back now. Massive fan of him. And then I'm pretty big fan of players like Owen Farrell, who kind of divides opinion in lots of ways. But I think somebody who's just a competitor, regardless of what you perceive about various other parts of his performance. He's a competitor, desperate to do well, and has got loads of passion with it. And I think there's a lot to be taken from that. And in the same vein, somebody like Johnny Sexton, a massive fan of his, in particular, just how resilient he is. So he's gone through injury and gone through criticism, and he steps up every time. So those guys definitely stand out for me. Yeah,
and say what you want about Farrell, but the game needs characters. The game needs a bit of controversy, and I'd hate it to be like rugby league where everyone's kind of same body shape, same playing style, those kind of things. So I think more power to him. Just wrap the arms a bit, obviously, but
I didn't want to mention that.
Yeah, of course. Well, on Farrell and also Ford and all these. Webinars going around. I just watched the one by Wisemantle on skill acquisition, and he said his time at England, Ford and Farrell were the most competitive players he's ever coached. So I thought that was a pretty big statement, considering he's coached internationally in 2 other countries, and is now pretty well known coach. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. It comes across in their performances. I think it kind of comes across, and just the fact they don't give up, but they push pretty hard.
Awesome. And third question: What about coaches? Who are some of the coaches you like? What they're doing on a high profile level?
It's hard not to be massively impressed by Stuart Lancaster. I think one of the things that impresses me most about him is that he's gone through adversity. He's gone through every stage of development, got to what you. As a coach, gone through an international job, the kind of pinnacle of your career, and crashed. And I think the measure of him is just the way that he now has responded to it. He doesn't show one inkling of bitterness, and I just think that is the best measure of somebody. If you can go through adversity, go through experiences that in reality you wish had never happened. And actually just learn from them. Massive fan of his. And obviously Warren Gatland, as growing up through my younger years, I just got very used to Wales losing rugby games. And the saying that there's always next year was essentially every international you ever watch Wales play, you're saying that before the game begins. So get into that period of time. I started with Mike Ruddock in 2005 with a Grand Slam, and then Warren Gatland taking over and actually getting consistency of results. I just massive fan of his, and indeed it's probably a measure of him really that he's managed to go down to the Chiefs and has achieved success immediately. It's kind of it's probably the affirmation that there's no one context success here. The guy's managed to build 3 groups of players through Welsh rugby, and then has gone into that environment and is successful again. So yeah, those guys really stand out for me.
Yeah, and on the Lions level as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, and then last question: who's someone in your local area, a grassroots coach who you think's doing great work and deserves some recognition?
I think one of the guys that I'm just a massive fan of, and I think as a person and as a coach, is a guy called Geraint Davies, who's coaching at Cardiff Blues. So he's on a grassroots. He's at a good level of the game, but he's a name that won't be known by a lot of the kind of a lot of the public. I think that somebody like him is a cracking example as to the adage that good people make good coaches. Good coaches make good people, and I can see that from him, and indeed the kind of culture that he'd be the name that I would pick out.
Perfect. Well, it's a great way to wrap things up for sure. All right, Geraint. Well, it's been awesome having you on the show. I've been following your stuff on Twitter for a while now. I really enjoy it. I really get a lot out of it, and no doubt other coaches get a huge amount out of it. So it's been great having a chat about that experience and your level 4, and all the best. And thanks for giving up some of your time.
No, pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers. This episode of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast is proudly brought to you by Rucky Analytics. During this time of reflection, rugby coaches are looking for new ways to help their players improve. Rucky's non-biased approach to game analytics gives coaches and players the ability to identify strengths and weaknesses in their game, highlighting specifically what skills need improving to become successful. Rucky has redesigned the entire performance analysis landscape in order to answer that key question: is my team getting any better? Rucky has the answers. Find out more on rucky.com, ruckie.com, or find them on Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at RugbyCoachesCNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, keep sharing ideas to make the game better.